Known for its sprawling network, high fares and aging infrastructure, New York subway is one of the most iconic transit systems in the world. Yet it's plagued with delays, outdated technology and constant maintenance issues, all despite its sky-high costs. So why does it cost so much? And how did it get to this point? We're going to break down the history, politics, economics and decisions that have led to this costly, outdated system. Welcome to today's video, where we're diving into a fascinating and often frustrating question: how New York's subway became so expensive yet so outdated. Stick around as we unravel the story of New York's subway. 1. A history of rapid expansion and unplanned growth. The origins of the New York subway system date back to 1904, a time when New York was booming and rapid transit was needed to connect the growing city. Initially, 3 competing companies operated the subway: the Interborough Rapid Transit Company, the IRT, the Brooklyn Manhattan Transit Corporation, the BMT, and the Independent Subway System, the IND. These private companies expanded quickly to meet demand, creating an extensive but somewhat uncoordinated network of lines. By the 1940s, the system was taken over by the city to create a unified transit system. However, this takeover created challenges. The lines were designed with varying track sizes, signals and power sources, leading to inefficiencies. Without a cohesive strategy, the subway became a patchwork of different designs and technologies. While this approach allowed for rapid expansion, it also laid the foundation for the structural and financial challenges the subway faces today. 2. A lack of regular investment and maintenance. One of the biggest issues with New York's subway is the lack of consistent, dedicated funding. Unlike many other countries where public transportation receives substantial government support, the New York subway has historically relied on fare revenue to fund its operations and maintenance. During economic downturns or budget shortfalls, maintenance budgets were often the first to be cut. In the 1970s, for instance, New York faced a severe financial crisis and subway funding was slashed. Tracks, cars and signals were neglected, leading to widespread breakdowns, graffiti and crime. The subway became known for being unsafe and unreliable. The effects of these decades of neglect are still visible today as the aging infrastructure struggles to keep up with modern demands. 3. Skyrocketing labor costs and complex union agreements. Labor costs are a major part of why the New York subway is so expensive. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the MTA, which operates the subway, employs thousands of workers, including drivers, conductors, maintenance crews, and administrators. The MTA has negotiated contracts with multiple unions, such as the Transport Workers Union, the TWU, which represents many of its employees. These union contracts include generous benefits and pensions, and they make it difficult for the MTA to manage labor costs effectively. Additionally, work rules set by the unions often require multiple employees for tasks that, in other cities, might require only one. For example, a subway train may need both a driver and a conductor, whereas other transit systems have automated much of their operation. These requirements make it challenging for the MTA to reduce costs, even as labor expenses continue to rise. 4. The challenges of aging infrastructure. New York's subway system is one of the oldest in the world, and many of its core components date back to the early 20th century. Unlike newer systems in places like Singapore or Tokyo, New York subway was not built with modern materials or designs that can handle the demands of a 24/7 system. As a result, the MTA has to deal with outdated tracks, signals and cars that require constant maintenance. One of the most notorious issues is the subway's signaling system, some of which dates back to the 1930s. These signals control train movements, but because they're so outdated, they break down frequently, causing delays. Upgrading this technology is extremely expensive, as it often requires shutting down lines for extended periods and making complex modifications. The combination of old technology and high repair costs contributes significantly to the subway's budget problems. 5. Political influence and bureaucratic challenges. The New York subway's governance structure is notoriously complex. The MTA, which operates the subway, is a state agency, meaning it is controlled by New York State rather than New York City. This has led to numerous political conflicts between the governor and the mayor, each with different agendas and priorities for the subway system. The MTA board, which makes key budget and policy decisions, includes members appointed by the governor, the mayor, and representatives from nearby counties. This fragmented governance creates a lack of accountability and slows down decision-making. Political influence and shifting priorities mean that long-term planning is difficult, as each new administration brings in its own vision. This lack of stable governance has hampered the MTA's ability to make the subway more efficient and modern. 6. The high cost of construction projects. One of the biggest mysteries about New York's subway system is why construction is so expensive. When compared to other cities around the world, New York consistently has some of the highest costs for subway construction and renovation projects. For example, the 2nd Avenue subway, a long-awaited expansion in Manhattan, cost approximately $4.5 billion for just 1.8 miles of track, one of the most expensive subway projects per mile in history. Experts attribute these high costs to a combination of factors, including extensive labor regulations, complex contracts, and inefficiencies within the MTA. In addition, the MTA often has to navigate a maze of regulations and environmental reviews, which can slow down projects and increase costs. As a result, every project costs significantly more than it would in other cities, further straining the subway's budget. 7. Limited revenue from fares and alternative funding sources. Unlike other world-class transit systems, New York subway relies heavily on fare revenue, which covers the majority of its operating budget. However, fare revenue alone is often insufficient to cover the costs of maintenance, let alone expansion and modernization. Although the MTA has increased fares multiple times, public backlash limits the extent to which fares can be raised. In contrast, cities like Hong Kong and Tokyo generate additional revenue through real estate and retail spaces connected to their transit systems. The MTA has not fully utilized these types of revenue streams, which limits its ability to fund improvements. While advertising and retail in stations bring in some money, it's not enough to cover the subway's extensive needs. 8. Slow progress on modernization projects. Modernizing the subway has been a priority for years, but progress has been painfully slow. Upgrading the signaling system alone has been in discussion for over a decade, yet only a small portion of the subway network has been updated. Newer signal technologies, such as communications-based train control (CBTC), could significantly reduce delays and increase train frequency. But installing CBTC is complicated and expensive, especially on a system as old and large as New York's. The East Side Access project, which will connect the Long Island Railroad to Grand Central Terminal, has been in the works for over 15 years and has faced numerous delays and cost overruns. Such delays are commonplace for the MTA, and each delay only adds to the project's final cost. The slow pace of modernization frustrates riders and leads to a cycle of ever-increasing expenses. 9. The impact of climate change and extreme weather events. New York subway is vulnerable to flooding and extreme weather, as demonstrated by Hurricane Sandy in 2012. The storm flooded multiple subway lines, causing billions of dollars in damage and shutting down parts of the system for days. The MTA has since invested in flood protection measures, such as installing floodgates and waterproofing subway entrances. However, these climate adaptation projects add another layer of costs to an already stretched budget. Preparing the subway for future storms and rising sea levels is essential, but it requires significant funding. The MTA is currently balancing these climate-related projects with urgent maintenance needs, making it even harder to keep the subway both affordable and up-to-date. 10. Public frustration and the need for reform. New York commuters face daily challenges with the subway, from overcrowding and delays to fare hikes. Public frustration with the MTA is widespread, and many riders feel that they're paying high fares for an unreliable service. This frustration has led to increased pressure on policymakers to address the subway's challenges and push for reforms. There have been calls to restructure the MTA to make it more efficient, transparent and accountable. Some have suggested greater city control over the subway, while others advocate for privatization of certain functions to reduce costs. Although reform won't be easy, many New Yorkers agree that change is necessary to make the subway more efficient and affordable. The story of New York subway is complex, a mix of historic growth, political challenges, aging infrastructure and soaring costs. While the system is iconic and indispensable to the city, it's clear that significant changes are needed to modernize and improve it. What's your opinion on how New York can revamp its subway? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the deep dive, please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more explorations of urban challenges worldwide. Thanks for watching.